Good. InDesign, in a nutshell, as they say. No? So this is the template that I'm sharing with you in Canvas. So in a way, this is the one you have been working already with. So just remember that the elements that I introduced here are orientative, so you can turn them off, and you should start working on the other layers, because this, whatever is in this layer, is not going to actually print. So make sure you click on images. Okay, so this is like pretty much like Photoshop or like Illustrator in the sense of how it's organized. But the main goal of InDesign is to serve as a platform to organize layouts, whether it's for a book, for a panel in a competition, or for just organization of a simple document or graphic. You can bring into InDesign almost everything: PDFs, PNGs, JPEGs, images, vectors, Illustrator files, almost anything. You can break 3D models, obviously, because they're not actually, well, InDesign is meant to be two-dimensional platform for illustrations. You know? And that's why from 3D modeling softwares like AutoCAD or Rhino, SketchUp, you're gonna have to do some flattening of your work, like we're doing with Rhino, using the Make 2D, you know? And then bring to InDesign. You can bring anything you want: file, place, that's the way you bring stuff. You can bring, again, images like the ones we were searching. When you place something, file place, you can place in two ways. I think I mentioned this the first day. The one way is to click one time. It brings the file that you intend to bring without deforming the scale, like the resolution and the scale and the size of that drawing. So when you bring, as we did other times, your final Illustrator file, like the ISO project A or whatever projects you've been working on, you should always bring them as a one click. Okay, here I don't have it, but when you bring them one click, so it doesn't change the scale. The other way is to click more than one time. Let's say the image, click, keep the mouse pressed, and then drag. That allows you to place something at whatever scale you want. Sometimes it's useful if you don't care about the size of the element you're bringing. But in the case that we're working on with a precise Illustrator template, it is not recommendable. Actually, you shouldn't do it ever, is click 2 times. It's going to change the scale, and therefore each of the projects are not going to correspond in their alignments or anything, actually. Okay. So in general, I recommend to always place clicking only once. Once you have whatever document, PDF, Illustrator, obviously you can select. You can select in two ways. One is the exterior part of the image. And then if you select in the exterior, you can move that object around. If you select in the center, you have this little bubble or circle. This is actually going to displace the image within the frame of the image. Almost as if you were inside of the window looking in to another world and you were moving the image within that world. Control C there. That's sometimes useful. In general, if you want to move the image, just select in the exterior area and move around. Another thing is scaling and the image. If you select the image, you have obviously the famous bounding box. If you do not select any other button besides the mouse, what you're doing is changing the frame only. You're not scaling the photography. Maybe you want to do that, maybe not. If you want to scale, you should press Control Shift. If you press Control Shift, that's actually scaling, keeping the proportions intact. If you only press Control, you messed up the proportions. Sometimes it's useful, but if you're working with a scale document, such as a plan, a section, elevation, this is super dangerous and you should never do it because you're deforming the whole proportion of the drawing. So if you want to scale a drawing, always keep in mind Control-Shift. Another way to make sure you keep proportions to select the image and right-click and just say transform scale, and then you can say give me a 200 if you want to double the scale, or 50 to go half, etc., etc. So again, Control-Shift to scale the proportions. This is great for by the way, your portfolios. I think this is the platform you should be doing your portfolio. Whoever does a portfolio in Photoshop, whoever does any presentation in Photoshop, any portfolio in Photoshop, any final panel or studio or anything in Photoshop, it's doing something very bad. And you're wasting your time in many little details that InDesign knows how to solve more efficiently. So I would never recommend you do that. You could potentially do it in Illustrator. That's not so bad. But if you have more than, let's say, 3 pages or 3 panels, InDesign surely is your best solution. Okay, so again, Control-Shift to scale, but you also have the option of not selecting anything and again, move the frame. You can crop out or in the image. Imagine you print screen this. I don't want to see this white area in the top. I'm going to crop it out. Simple way of cropping. If I have, you can press Alt and select the image and drag. That's to copy it. And a very useful tool that is actually also in Photoshop in here, but it's much more powerful in InDesign is the guidelines. No? So as you move your objects, you have these green guidelines that is telling you, hey, you're exactly aligned to this or to that. You're centered to this, you're centered to the page when the guidelines in magenta appears. And there are many tools to distance. You can get guidelines, for example, that will tell you the distance between an image and another one. So let me see if I can get that. Notice how the green ones in the bottom there, they're telling you, hey, the distance between these 3 images in the middle, the gap, it's exactly the same. This is very useful. Then you can take 3 of them, Control-Shift, scale the 3 of them at the same time. No. And for portfolio purposes, this is fantastic. Imagine you have an image like that size, and then this one is like a different size, and you want to organize them in a nice way, and you say, well, how do I do this? Well, you can start scaling this, guys, properly. You move them to the side, then you place this one here. Snap to the bottom. Select the 3 of them. Control-Shift always to make them all smaller. Oops. And then I can move them to get that gap to be the same, and then move them to the side. Control-Shift the 3 of them. Snap to the edges. And they're all aligned perfectly in the top, bottom, but each of them have a different proportion. So I'm being very consistent and very clean about it. No? Oftentimes in a project, you have a rendering that is portrait, the other one is landscape, and the other one is like a perfect square. And you say, how do I put them in a nice way? Well, this could be one way. Another way you can put them here on the bottom. This might be more important. Shift Control to make it bigger. Select the 3 of them. Scale down. Place it on the top. Scale to the edge on the bottom. And text comes here, for example. No? Pop, pop, pop. Everything is perfectly aligned. The gaps are exactly the same, etc., etc. Okay, in InDesign, obviously you can place text, which is something that you need in your portfolios, in your panels, in any kind of document. Shortcuts, the same as in other Adobe softwares, is the T for text. And the way text works in InDesign is that you just create a box and you can type your material. No? Text is pretty much like a Word document. You can change the font, type of letter, size. Okay, there you go. You can obviously bold some parts, italic. So it's almost like a whole set of, whatever you need from the world of Word, you can have it embedded in InDesign, which is fantastic. The box of the text also can be made bigger, smaller at any time. So it's great, it adapts, and you can move it as if it was an image. And it also snaps or links to other images by using the guidelines in different ways. So it's easy to align to different parts immediately, the text has many features. It's actually, some of them are fantastic. You can make it bigger. And then there are features such as creating, see if I find it now. Under window and paragraph, I guess it is. Let me see if I find this. Paragraph here, I think that would be it. You can create columns. That's the one I wanted to do. Normally there's also in the top here, but for some reason I don't find them. You can do split columns and have two of them. And this is actually quite useful because you can actually create two columns and make them continuous, or have other system of columns altogether. Again, that's under span columns. I can say 3 columns, and make the gutter, which is the space between, a little bigger. And it runs from one to another, so you have actually a very kind of a straightforward way of creating your own paragraphs. So you don't have to actually create another box for the text. As you write, this is moving on and creating its own system of columns, properly set, and you can change those columns efficiently. I personally like that one. Another thing, if you have this little plus here, that means that there's actually text that it goes beyond the box of the text. And that, as I mentioned one time, is giving me an error. This is one of the most common errors in InDesign, is that your text is bigger than the box that contains it. You either go inside and delete whatever is out there that you don't want, or what you can do is click on the plus. If you click on the plus, it creates another box. And the nice thing about it is that whatever you are adding in this text, it continues to the other text. They're interconnected. So you could have potentially an image in the middle or whatever, and then the text up here. And this text is talking to this one, and you can have that in different pages and so on. So you don't have to calculate, how much of this text I have here, how big is the paragraph. You just know that whatever you write here is going to be expanding to this other one and continuing. Like in Word, you have many relationships between image and text. If you select any image, you have these options up here. These are how you wrap the text around the image. If you say wrap it around, you see how the text avoids the image. That's actually a fantastic tool. And you can tell it how much you want it to avoid the text by growing the space between image and text, no? Okay. Or you can even expand the cropping view so it kind of spells the text away. This is very good for, you know, if you're doing more of like a style of text and image all together. So that could be a nice way of kind of taking the text away. Nice. Wherever the text goes, you will never have, sorry, wherever the image goes, the text doesn't go. What else things? There's a lot of stuff. InDesign is great for these things. One thing I didn't mention, you also have the option of pages here. Right now we have one single page, but the good thing about InDesign, the best thing is that you can actually edit a full book of 1,000 pages. No? So you can literally add by right-clicking on the page and say insert pages and say, you know, 15 pages, okay, and it gives you a bunch of pages all together. In this case, they're the same, I just kind of copy them. I don't have to necessarily copy them. Mm-hmm. I actually think was working on the masters, which is another world. So move around, delete. These are things that actually are quite straightforward. What else? What else? The same issues of drawing. You can draw, obviously, with different ways. Imagine you want the normal way to be is to work in Illustrator the drawings, bring them here, but you might want to do annotations in InDesign. Annotations, you will use the pen tool, the same tool that exists in Illustrator, and you can just add simple ones, such as these ones, and say you want a stroke in black color. There you go, and you can select it, and under strokes, you will also find the similar tools as in Illustrator. For example, you might want a start end little quote or note that you can change the size, say 200. Okay, and it could be slightly gray because black is too strong. So we'll have to go to colors, black. There you go. Now, when I see, especially later on, I'm teaching also Design 7, I see students annotating a diagram or a plan. And what they do is very, very fast without much dedication. They use maybe the pen tool, or maybe they use the line tool, just the line tool. And they have like a monster like this that is, I'm gonna go to the stroke and make it exaggerated. Like this type of lines, no, like boom in your face, no. I think if you have a drawing, you should always annotate it with a very thin, respectful line that says, "Hey, this is this, no, and this is that," and you can just copy the same one by pressing Alt and say, "This is that," no. Okay. Those could be nice lines of annotation, and you can place a text here. This is that thing, and Alt here. That would be a nice respectful annotation. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe actually you select these guys. Oops, I don't know what happened there. And you say, I want actually an arrow, a small and cute arrow. I'm gonna go to strokes. I'm gonna say, give me the arrow on the other side, like a circle and none. I'm gonna make it 300. So that could be a nice one. And then the text is actually on top of the line. No? There you go. That could be a nice type of annotation, very elegant, very sophisticated. Even further, you can say, I want it to be like a dotted line, you know, it comes like a very cute and respectful type of dotted line, or it could be a dashed line. No. So I recommend, and we will have in the second panel a lot of these. So just keep in mind that, you know, dashed lines, and to create annotations, like we have to always like create these very sensitive, very elegant ways of annotating. And this could be, again, like, I don't know, the living room, no? Et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Now, as you do your things, you have your images and your lines that you can create. You can create text, as you know, you can create gradients and things like that. But I wouldn't actually create things that are graphic creative process. I will use Illustrator for those things, for like a diagram. If I want to create a diagram, I will do it in Illustrator, bring it here and annotate it only here. So things like a text, like a final image or a final diagram, and maybe annotation lines and some, maybe the labels for some images could be here, but it's almost like the dressing of the graphics, not necessarily the graphics themselves. I will use Illustrator for that, or Photoshop for images, no? Okay, so notice that you have like the box here in blue. That's because the text is shown as a box, as I mentioned before. You can see these in different ways. If you press W, it shows you the preview of the document. That's why the guidelines also disappear. You can press W again, and those disappear. So sorry, appear again. It's like a preview, no? Perfect. I think tab allows you to get rid of the command tool, so it leaves it a little bit cleaner. So that and W starts giving a bit better. But I believe F is in Photoshop. You should be able to see this obviously as a presentation mode, display performance. No, that will be only the images. There you go. So imagine, because especially in the digital world we're living now, in Studio, you might want to present something using InDesign. Actually, it's easier to zoom in and zoom out. So maybe you want to use InDesign and say View Screen Mode Presentation, which is Shift W. You have your final, you know, your images, your diagrams, your Illustrator files, your annotations, your text, your labels. Everything is perfectly organized in InDesign. And what you do is just, you know, present like this, no? You can also do that. That's an option. Okay, more. Well, exporting. Imagine you're done with the panel. You have all of your, how do we take things to different layers? It's exactly the same as in Illustrator. You select an object and you drag the little box. So if you want to take that sample to guidelines or whatever, you can drag the little box to that. So there it is. Turn off, turn on. Obviously, you can lock layers. You can create new layers. One thing that is important is the idea of links, and that's actually the most important thing. If I place this image, which is in this folder, and I place it here, oops, okay, and I save this file, okay, just gonna show you where it is in my computer. It's actually right here under the folder B3 classwork. Okay, so if I actually close this file, which is right there, and I go to another computer, let's imagine you're working for whatever reason with another computer in the computer lab or whatever it is, and you only take the file that is actually the InDesign file. You only take, let me save it as so we can see it. Panel 1, classwork, there. Close this. I've been working in InDesign for a while. This is the file I've been working on, and you say, "Ooh, I have to go to another computer and I'll send it to a friend," whatever. You send this file only, InDesign file only. It's just not going to work. Okay, you need to do the following always to make sure that between different computers it works properly. What do you have to do? You open your file, you know everything is correct here, has no errors here, all of the links are there, and you should do a file package. A package, what it creates, and I'm just going to do it in the desktop. I'm going to place it here under my name, Severino. It calculates a bunch of stuff, and under Severino, you will see this folder now. Final presentation, blah, blah, blah. This is the package of an InDesign. This package contains all of the files that you need, plus the printed PDF, which is fantastic. Plus, the most important thing is the links folder. This contains the image or images that you have used in that file. Without those images or those links, and only with the InDesign, it's just not going to work. You need to take everything with you. It's very important. Look what happens if I get rid of that folder. If I go to classwork, and this is actually the image, I delete it or I take it away. Control X. Let's just delete it for a second. No, Control X. Look what happens. The moment I take that image out of the folder where it was, it brings that interrogation and it gives me an error. If I double click on the error, I can take a look and see there's actually a missing link. Okay, this is very important to understand. Links are basically your images placed in whatever folder you place them in, and you should have them in that folder always. That's why it's good to create a link folder and place every single document that you place in your panel there, and that you take it always with you. Okay, how do we solve this problem of missing link? Well, you can go to the links tab, and you can relink and search for it in a way. I can search for whatever it is. This thing, I think I place it on the Severino or on the desktop, this one, and say open. And then that disappears. And now we're good, no errors. Control C that, go back. Another way is just say, well, where should it be? And I could just go and place it where it should be in this case, which I believe it was under classwork here, no? So Control V, place it there. And now it remembers, oh yeah, this is where it is, so the link comes again. Why links are important? Number one, if you're embedding everything, like in Illustrator, it becomes a very heavy file and impossible to work with. Links allows you to work in a very smooth way, and you don't have to have all the kind of megabytes for each image. So it's almost like a distant work, no? Another reason is that you can actually edit Imagine I want to edit this image. I don't like how it looks. I can right click on the image and you can say edit with here and say Photoshop, for example. That's going to open Photoshop. It's going to take a little while with that image. Taking time. There is. Let's imagine it's like I want to destroy this pattern. I'm going to paint with a black color and a small brush here. And I save in Photoshop. Okay. And I go back. Automatically the link changes. I don't have to place it again. It's just like they're speaking, no? This InDesign is speaking to the image. It's not an image in itself. So if you change the image, then it will change automatically in InDesign. The same goes to any Illustrator file. Let's just imagine I place here I don't know if these ones are working or not. Yeah, I'm missing those. Let's take the example I used, the tracing. There you go. This is the one I traced from our assignment number 2. And I can also edit. So you edit with Illustrator. You will open it up in Illustrator. I'm going to actually delete some stuff just for the sake of it and say I like it that way. I can save the Illustrator file. And in theory, if it's saved, it should automatically change it in InDesign. So I don't have to like relink or whatever. It's talking automatically, you know? So imagine in your project, you change the line weight or the line thickness, then it will change automatically with no problem. So that conversation between the link and the program that you will use to change that particular document, it's actually fantastic, no?
So when we upload like our final InDesign, should we do that package? Then you can see all the links.
I will ask, that's a great question. I will ask for the package at the end of the phase 1, yes. But
Okay.
the only thing I want from you now, each of these reviews on Canvas, is what I'm gonna say, just the last thing. It's file, export, okay? Once you're done with your document, export, make sure that you don't have any errors here. Say export, you're gonna say PDF print, you're gonna give it a name, and you maybe assignment 2, whatever it is. And there are many options here, especially for books. You might want to do pages, spreads, and so on. But for this, it's quite straightforward. It's the default export. It's going to be thinking a little bit because your files are going to be much heavier than mine. And I don't even know where I actually place it. So let me actually do that again. Under classwork, okay. Sorry, so I go back to classwork, and here is, this is the PDF that I've been working on. And this is the document, the file, the single file that you upload to Canvas. Okay? I'm going to stop recording because I think that's the thing.